The house was too quiet for a life once so full. Evelyn Hart sat at the edge of her floral-patterned armchair, staring out at the wind, teasing the brittle rose bushes in the garden she no longer tended. The ticking grandfather clock echoed through the stillness like a metronome counting down to nothing. It was the third Tuesday of the month. She knew because her grocery list sat untouched on the kitchen counter, written in the same blue ink she always used. But there was no need to go. No one was coming. No one had been in weeks. Her phone buzzed once. She shuffled across the hardwood floor to find it. A message from her son Marcus. "Can't make it this weekend. Sorry, work's insane. Love you." No call. Just text. Always too busy. She stared at the screen a moment longer, then placed it face down. She wouldn't respond. Not today. Maybe not ever. Her youngest, Dylan, hadn't spoken to her in over a year, not since the argument. He'd shouted things at her that she still couldn't believe came from his mouth. Manipulative, controlling, cold. He'd stormed out of her house with his wife trailing behind, face flushed with secondhand fury. Evelyn had stood at the top of the stairs, arms limp at her sides, listening to the front door slam. And Clara, her middle child, the one she thought she'd always understood, now lived across the country and communicated through sterile Christmas cards. "Warm wishes," Clara wrote last December. "Not love, not even thinking of you, just wishes. Warm and empty." The truth was bitter in Evelyn's throat. They no longer needed her. Perhaps they never really had. Perhaps she had filled a role so well, so completely, that she had made herself invisible the moment they could walk on their own. She still made tea for 2 in the morning. Still set out a second plate at breakfast. Habit more than hope. Still opened the curtains in the guest room in case anyone, might stop by. The mail slot clattered. A sound that once excited her, a possibility, now filled her with dread. Bills. Catalogs. Useless charity letters addressed to resident. But this time, a single, thick envelope slid across the hallway tiles. No return address. The handwriting was neat, but unfamiliar. She stared at it for a full minute before picking it up. Her name was written in a slanted, almost apologetic hand. Evelyn Hart, 9 Willow Creek Lane, Thistlebrook, Massachusetts. Back in the kitchen, she sat down at the table. The envelope trembled slightly in her hands as she opened it. Inside was a single page. "Dear Mrs. Hart, my name is Rose. I believe I'm your granddaughter. My mother told me she gave me up for adoption years ago. I've recently uncovered records that lead to you. I don't want anything from you. I just want the truth. I hope this letter reaches the right person. Sincerely, Rose Alcott." Evelyn blinked at the words, read them again. Granddaughter? But none of her children had told her they had ever. Then her stomach flipped. A memory surfaced like a shard of glass cutting through calm water. 28 years ago, Clara had come home from college, pale and quiet. There had been whispered phone calls, a missed semester, and a vague explanation about mono. Clara had looked hollow that winter. Evelyn remembered the oversized sweaters and the long showers. She'd asked, gently, if Clara was all right. Clara had snapped, "Don't pry." A week later, Evelyn's husband, Harold, took Clara on a trip to Vermont. When they returned, Clara said nothing, but she started eating again, smiling. Evelyn hadn't questioned it. She trusted Harold, trusted that he'd handled it. She hadn't known, she couldn't have known, what he had handled. And yet, something else stirred, a flash of a conversation with Harold, hazy but haunting. "She's going through something private, Evie. I'm helping her." "What do you mean private?" "It's done now, it's over, just let it be." Now Evelyn remembered the envelope Harold had asked her to sign. Hospital paperwork, he'd said. Routine. She had signed it in the kitchen without reading. She was making soup. Evelyn rose, almost too fast, her knees catching the table. The letter fluttered to the floor. She clutched the edge of the counter, nausea blooming in her chest. Had she signed away her grandchild's life? Had Harold convinced Clara to give up her baby? Had they lied to her? Together? What else had been kept from her in the name of not worrying her? She picked up the letter again. Rose. The name felt foreign and familiar all at once. Was it possible? Could this young woman truly be hers? Not by birth, but by bloodline, by history, by the quiet things stolen from women like her in moments of supposed mercy? The silence in the house shifted. It no longer felt peaceful. It felt like it had been hiding something. She looked around the kitchen as if it too might confess. If the past could come back in a single envelope, what else might be waiting? Evelyn didn't sleep that night. The letter from Rose sat on her nightstand like a burning coal. She reread it by lamplight a dozen times, as if fresh meaning might emerge from the careful strokes of each word. At one point, she found herself whispering the name Rose Alcott, as if speaking it aloud might summon a memory, a face, anything. But there was only the stillness and a bone-deep unease. By morning, Evelyn had made up her mind. She would find out who Rose was, really. And if she was telling the truth, then someone, perhaps several someones, had lied to her in ways that reshaped her entire history. She began with Clara. It took only a few minutes of online sleuthing to track down her daughter's high school yearbook photo, confirming a familiar, tight-lipped smile. Evelyn scanned the pages. There it was, junior year, Clara Hart, debate team, drama club, honor society. Senior year was different, no photo, no mention. Clara had studied from home that year, after her mysterious illness. Evelyn had accepted it at the time, reassured by Harold's calming voice, his insistence that Clara just needs space. The library had changed since Evelyn's last visit, but the local records hadn't. Sitting in front of a dusty microfiche machine, she pulled up newspaper archives from the early 1990s and searched for any mention of Clara Hart. And there it was. A brief announcement in the Thistlebrook Herald, dated May 17, 1997, unidentified teenage girl admitted to St. Brigid's under emergency conditions. Privacy requested. No further details released. The name wasn't given, but the date matched the time Clara had disappeared with Harold. The hospital named was 2 towns over, the same one Evelyn vaguely remembered driving past on a rare outing with Harold during Clara's absence. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she jotted the name down, St. Brigid's Maternity Annex. Back home, she called the hospital, heart pounding. She explained she was trying to confirm a family connection. The woman on the phone hesitated. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hart, that information is restricted. We don't disclose adoption records." "I'm not asking for adoption records," Evelyn replied carefully. "I'm asking if someone with my name signed hospital forms around that date. I believe I may have. I believe something was kept from me." There was silence on the line. Then, quietly, "Please hold." 5 minutes later, the woman returned. "I can confirm that an Evelyn Hart signed patient release documentation on May 22, 1997, but the record was sealed shortly afterward under a confidentiality clause." Evelyn felt like the room had tilted sideways. She had signed something, she had been there, but why couldn't she remember? "I was told the child died," Evelyn whispered. "A stillbirth." Another pause. "That is not what our records say." The receiver slipped slightly in Evelyn's hand. "What?" "There is no notation of a stillbirth. In fact, our records show a live birth. The baby girl was transferred to a private adoption agency within 48 hours. Evelyn couldn't breathe. Her knees gave, and she sank into the kitchen chair. She had been told her grandchild was gone, that it was over, that it was something best not spoken of. But the truth was, Clara's child had lived, and Evelyn, unknowingly, had played a role in her disappearance. She hung up and sat in stunned silence, staring at the table as the early afternoon light crept across its wooden surface. She thought of Harold, of the strange way he had taken control during Clara's pregnancy, of how she'd felt oddly shut out from her own daughter's crisis. She had blamed herself for being too gentle, too trusting. But now she saw it differently. He had shut her out. Deliberately. Why? The doorbell rang. Evelyn startled. It wasn't a sound she heard often anymore. She crossed the hall and opened the door to find a young woman standing on the stoop, her brown hair tucked beneath a wool hat, eyes cautious and wide. She held a small, leather-bound journal in her hands. "Mrs. Hart?" Evelyn's voice caught in her throat. "Yes?" The woman's lip trembled. "I'm Rose." It was like staring into Clara's face, younger and softer, but unmistakably familiar. The resemblance was there, in the set of her mouth, the way her brow arched when she spoke. Evelyn clutched the edge of the doorframe. "I'm sorry to just show up. I didn't know if you'd answer the letter." I got it," Evelyn murmured. They stood there in silence until Evelyn opened the door wider. "Come in." Inside, Rose perched on the edge of the armchair like someone afraid to disturb the past. "I wasn't sure," she said, "until I saw your name on the hospital form. And then this." She handed Evelyn the journal. "It belonged to my adoptive mother. She kept everything, including a letter from my birth mother." Evelyn opened the journal to find a yellowed envelope taped inside. In shaky handwriting, "To my daughter. One day, I hope you'll read this. I hope someone will tell you the truth." The signature at the bottom, elegant, hurried, was unmistakable. Clara. Evelyn pressed the letter to her chest, her eyes burning. Her daughter hadn't forgotten. She had tried to leave a trail. Somewhere along the way, someone had covered it up. And Evelyn had been caught in the middle, unknowing, manipulated, complicit by silence. Now, the past was stirring, and Evelyn was no longer alone in her search. The silence had cracked, but what came next would be louder and far more dangerous. Evelyn hadn't intended to go digging through Harold's things. After all, he'd been dead nearly 5 years. Whatever lies or missteps lay in his past had died with him. At least that's what she told herself. But now, with the truth about Clara's baby beginning to surface, the cracks in her marriage were suddenly too wide to ignore. That night, while Rose slept in the guest room upstairs, unwilling to return to her adoptive parents just yet, Evelyn climbed into the attic with a flashlight and a rising dread in her throat. The air was stale with dust and insulation. Old boxes lined the walls, each one neatly labeled in Harold's efficient hand. Tax documents, workshop receipts, vacation photos, 1989. Evelyn passed those by. It wasn't until she found the unlabeled box shoved behind an old rocking horse that she paused. Inside was a stack of weathered manila folders, a few old Polaroids, and a false-bottomed envelope marked only with a single word: travel. Evelyn opened it and found a series of flight receipts and hotel invoices, some familiar, others not. She knew Harold had traveled for work in spurts during their marriage, mostly in the late 90s and early 2000s. But these were different. For one thing, the destinations didn't line up. She remembered him claiming to be in Des Moines for a conference, but the receipt said Charleston, South Carolina. Another trip, supposedly to Chicago, was actually to a place called Woodbury Falls, somewhere she'd never even heard of. One hotel bill was from a lodge that charged per week, not per night. The total? Nearly 2 months' stay. The dates? Right in the middle of the year, Clara had taken sick leave. Evelyn's pulse quickened. At the bottom of the envelope was something else. A set of wire transfer slips, same amount every month, like clockwork for nearly 2 decades. The account name was K. Addington. The address? Atlanta, Georgia. Evelyn's hands trembled. She recognized neither the name nor the address, but the handwriting on the memo line was unmistakably Harold's. Each transfer had been marked with a cryptic note. For the girl. Education expenses. Medical. Do not forward. A sour chill gripped Evelyn's stomach. Was Clara the girl? Or someone else? She flipped through the Polaroids next. They were old, sun-bleached and curling, but each one unmistakably captured Harold smiling alongside a dark-haired woman and a child at various ages. A toddler with Harold's chin. A preteen holding a model airplane. A high schooler in a graduation gown. Always Harold beside them, but never Evelyn. Never their children. The most recent photo, dated just 6 years before Harold's death, showed Harold standing at the edge of a small backyard barbecue. The boy, now a young man, smiling in the background. And the woman, Evelyn stared at her face. She looked familiar in a deeply unsettling way. Not a stranger. More like someone Evelyn should know or did once. It tugged at her memory like a frayed thread she couldn't quite pull loose. "Mom?" Evelyn jumped, nearly dropping the photo. Rose stood at the foot of the attic ladder in her pajamas, eyes wide. Evelyn descended slowly, clutching the envelope of evidence. "I think your grandfather had another family," she said, voice steady despite the thunder of her heart. Rose sat beside her on the couch, stunned. "You think he cheated?" "No." Evelyn looked down at the photos. "I think he lived a double life." The next day, Evelyn contacted the bank listed on the wire transfers. She posed as the estate executor, technically true, and requested information about the recurring payments. After some wrangling and a faxed death certificate, she received a name and phone number tied to the account. "Kay Addington," Evelyn called. A woman answered. Her voice was clipped, defensive. "Yes? Is this Catherine Addington?" A long pause. "Who's asking?" "My name is Evelyn Hart. I was married to Harold Hart. I believe he may have sent you money for years. I just want to understand why." The silence turned dangerous. "He told me you were dead." Evelyn's knees gave out. She sat down slowly. "What?" "He said his wife died when the kids were little. That he raised them alone. That's what he told me when we met." Evelyn swallowed hard. "You have a son?" Another pause. "I did," Catherine whispered. "He died 2 years ago. Leukemia. Harold wasn't there. He stopped coming after he got sick, said he couldn't handle the guilt. But the money never stopped." Evelyn pressed the phone tighter to her ear. "What was his name?" "Adam. Adam Hart." Evelyn's world tilted. A fourth child, a son she never knew existed, a life Harold had built in the shadows while Evelyn raised their 3 children in the wreckage of his absences. When the call ended, Evelyn sat for hours, photo in hand, staring at the young man's smile, a smile that looked exactly like Dylan's. She went to Dylan's old room and opened a drawer that hadn't been touched in years. At the back, hidden beneath crumpled school papers and old birthday cards, she found something strange, a letter addressed to Dylan Hart, postmarked from Woodbury Falls. The return name, Adam. She opened it. "I know we're not supposed to talk, but I just wanted to say thank you for keeping the secret, for not telling her. I wish I had a brother like you growing up. And even if she never knows about me, at least you do." Evelyn stared, horrified. Dylan had known. He hadn't just turned cruel out of grief. He'd been protecting Harold's secret, one that destroyed any illusion Evelyn had of their so-called family. And Clara? Had she known too? The lies were no longer abstract. They had names, faces, consequences. Her entire life had been a stage set built on silence, and every prop was beginning to fall. The discovery of Harold's second family left Evelyn gutted. But she hadn't reached the bottom of the betrayal yet. She now looked at everything with suspicion. The photographs on the walls, the boxes in the attic, the carefully curated stories she had told herself for years just to stay afloat. Even Dylan's bitterness, which once felt like grief misplaced, now seemed deliberate. She had to know more. After a sleepless night, Evelyn made an appointment with a probate lawyer in town, Melinda Gray, a brisk, no-nonsense woman who wore horn-rimmed glasses and didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I want to update my will," Evelyn said, "but first, I need to understand what happened to my husbands." Melinda tapped on her keyboard. "Harold Hart passed away 5 years ago. Will was filed with the county clerk's office. Looks like your son, Dylan Hart, was listed as the executor." Evelyn nodded. "That was expected at the time. He was the most organized. At least I thought." Melinda pulled up the document on screen and squinted. What? This will was filed a week after Harold's death. That's unusual." Most people file it immediately. There's no copy of a previous version, but... She stopped, adjusting her glasses. You say you never saw this version? No. He kept saying he was working on it, that he hadn't finalized anything. We talked about it a few times after his health started declining. He said he wanted everything split equally. Melinda leaned back. Well, that's not what this says. Evelyn blinked. What? This version gives the bulk of the estate, house, savings, investments, to Dylan. Clara gets a small trust fund, and Nora's name isn't even mentioned. Evelyn's stomach dropped. That can't be right. Nora may be distant, but Harold adored her. He'd never... Melinda raised a hand. It gets stranger. The will is signed, but it's not notarized. Isn't that required? Not necessarily, but it makes the document easier to contest. What's more troubling is that the witness signature is from someone named Brent Callahan. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. That's Dylan's college roommate. Melinda turned the monitor toward her. Know what this looks like to me? Evelyn already knew. A forgery. It felt ludicrous, dramatic, something out of a courtroom thriller. But the moment Melinda printed the signature, Evelyn recognized it. Harold's real signature had always been large, deliberate, almost proud. This one was too neat, too practiced. Melinda's voice lowered. We can pursue this. If Dylan tampered with this document, if he forged it or coerced Harold in any way, we can challenge it. You might not recover everything, but... No, Evelyn said quietly. Not yet. I need to understand why. Later that evening, Evelyn returned home and retrieved the locked box Harold kept in his desk. For years, she hadn't dared touch it. She didn't know the combination, but someone else had. Rose, watching from the kitchen, said quietly, Try your anniversary. Evelyn did. It clicked open. Inside, Evelyn found what she hadn't expected. Handwritten letters, none addressed to her. Some were drafts, others were never sent. The oldest was dated back nearly 30 years. Dylan, I'm sorry for what I said. I know you think I'm choosing sides, but this is between your mother and me. Please remember, family is not about fairness. It's about protection. You'll understand someday. You're my legacy. You'll have what I couldn't. Just don't tell her everything. Evelyn sat back, stunned. Another letter, dated 5 years before Harold's death, chilled her to the bone. If she finds out about the real will, she'll contest it. Burn the old copy. Keep this one safe. You know what to do. The house is yours now. She won't fight you if she thinks it's what I wanted. Betrayal pooled in her chest like venom. Harold had deliberately manipulated the estate, not to balance the scales, but to ensure Evelyn would be left with nothing. And Dylan, who had already known about Adam, the secret son, had gone along with it. She hadn't lost a son to grief, she'd lost him to greed. And yet, something still didn't add up. Why would Harold leave Clara out almost entirely? She pulled out her own copy of their joint accounts, cross-referencing them with the wire transfers. That's when she found it. An account opened in Clara's name when she was 17. Funded not by Harold, but by Evelyn. Tens of thousands had been deposited over the years. Birthday money, college tuition payments, even the down payment for Clara's first apartment. But recently, there had been large withdrawals, several going to a publishing agency in New York. That's when it hit her. Clara had used Evelyn's money to publish her memoir, the one that painted Evelyn as cold, neglectful, the one that never mentioned Harold's betrayals or Dylan's manipulation. Evelyn stared at the transaction history and felt something inside her crack. Not like a break, but like a shell. She wasn't just forgotten, she had been rewritten, used, silenced, erased. The phone rang. It was Rose, calling from upstairs on the landline. "Grandma," she whispered, voice trembling. "I was looking through Dylan's old computer. There's a document here. It's called final_draft_will_edited.doc." Evelyn stood slowly. The lies weren't just in the past. They were coded, cataloged, and saved. And for the first time in years, Evelyn didn't feel powerless. She felt ready. The first time Evelyn saw the book, it was by accident. She had gone to the town's tiny bookstore in search of an old gardening almanac, something to keep her distracted from the hurricane of betrayal swirling inside her. But as she turned a corner, her own face stopped her cold. Well, not her face. A woman who looked like her, painted in shadow across the dust jacket of a hardcover memoir. The title leapt out, Salt in the Wound, A Daughter's Survival Story, by Evelyn Hart. She stared, frozen. Her fingers hovered over the book's spine, as though it were an exposed wire. Slowly, she lifted it and turned to the back flap. There was Clara, radiant in black and white, chin lifted like a survivor of some ancient war. The biography read, Evelyn Hart is a celebrated author and speaker whose deeply personal memoir explores resilience in the face of a difficult and emotionally stunted upbringing. She currently resides in New York with her wife and their rescue dog, Ollie. Emotionally stunted upbringing? Evelyn sat down right there on the bookstore bench and opened the first chapter. By the 5th page, her hands were shaking. Clara had rewritten their entire family history. Her childhood was recast as bleak and frigid. Their home, a haven Evelyn had poured herself into, was depicted as a place of tension, silences, and shame. Harold's absences were mentioned, but never questioned. Dylan, somehow, came out the hero, a protective older brother who shielded me when our mother turned cold. Evelyn was not named, only referred to as my mother, she, the woman at the window. Every anecdote had been bent. Events Evelyn remembered with fondness became darkened, twisted. Clara even described a moment when she was left alone in the house for 2 days as a child, while my mother vanished to quote, clear her head. That had never happened. That couldn't have happened. Could it? Evelyn bought the book and read the entire thing in one night, devouring every page in horrified disbelief. The worst came at the end. There are wounds that never close, especially when they come not from strangers but from the ones who were supposed to love us best. The next morning, Evelyn drove to Clara's New York apartment. She didn't call first. Clara answered the door with surprise that melted quickly into defensiveness. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Evelyn held up the book like a weapon. "We need to talk." They sat across from each other in Clara's sleek kitchen, the book between them like a loaded gun. "You lied," Evelyn said. Her voice was low, but her hands trembled with restraint. "You made me a villain in your story." "I told the truth," Clara snapped, too quickly. "My truth." "Your truth?" "Clara, I never—" Evelyn stopped. She was about to defend herself. "But what good would it do? Do you even remember what I went through in that house?" Clara asked. "Or were you too busy holding everything together for everyone else?" Evelyn tried to breathe. "That's exactly what I was doing, holding everything together. For you. For your father, for Dylan. I gave up everything." "No one asked you to," Clara interrupted sharply. "You made sacrifices and then punished us with them. You wore them like armor." Evelyn stared at her daughter and saw not the child she raised but the stranger she'd become. And then Clara said something that made Evelyn's blood run cold. "You weren't even supposed to read it. Dylan said you'd never find out." "Dylan knew?" Clara's face froze. Evelyn pressed. "He encouraged this?" Clara looked away. "He read the early drafts. Said people would relate more if I leaned into the neglect." Evelyn rose from the table. "You mean exaggerated it?" "Is it exaggeration?" Clara said softly. "If that's how it felt?" Evelyn's voice cracked. "I'm not angry that you needed to tell your story. I'm angry that you erased mine. You made me a ghost while using my money to publish it." Clara's eyes flashed. "What?" "I checked the bank statements. That money came from the account I opened for you. The one your father set up after college. That memoir was funded with the very love you claim I never gave you." Clara didn't deny it. She only said, "Maybe I needed to take something back." The drive home was silent, save for Evelyn's thoughts, now sharp and electric. Her own children had written her out of their lives, not just in silence but in print, publicly, irrevocably. But one detail from the visit haunted her. As she was leaving Clara's apartment, she noticed a photo in the hallway. It was old, Evelyn holding Clara as a baby. It had been altered in the book to describe a moment of emotional absence, but in the photograph, Evelyn's face was unmistakably filled with love, and taped to the back of the photo was a note, slipped into the frame so only the person who changed the picture would find it. She doesn't know everything, she never will, but we owe it to her to keep some things buried. The note wasn't in Clara's handwriting. It was Dylan's. That night, Evelyn added a sticky note to her growing collection of secrets. She wrote just 3 words. "They're hiding something." And in that moment, Evelyn no longer mourned the past. She planned to exhume it. It started as desperation, a late-night search on her cracked iPad, her fingers trembling with exhaustion and fury. Evelyn clicked "Buy Now" on a home DNA kit, not for curiosity, not for ancestry maps or medical predictions, but because she needed proof of something. Proof that Clara was her daughter. Proof that she hadn't imagined the decades they lived together. Proof that she had not been as invisible as everyone was pretending. The results were supposed to take 4 to 6 weeks. They arrived in 12 days. She almost didn't open the email. She stood over her laptop for a full hour, cup of cold tea in hand, debating, but when she did click through, she couldn't look away. Evelyn Hart, biological relationships. Summary: Clara Hart, not a biological match. Dylan Hart, not a biological match. Nicholas Hart, biological match, 48.3%. Likely biological son Genevieve Rowland. Predicted relation. Granddaughter Evelyn blinked, reloaded the page. Then she read it again. Clara? Not her daughter. Dylan? Not her son. But Nicholas was. The oldest. Her quiet, absent-minded firstborn. He had always seemed the most distant, yet he was the only one who shared her blood. And Genevieve, the girl who started this whole unraveling, her granddaughter. But whose granddaughter? Panicked, Evelyn checked her old photo boxes. There was nothing of Clara's birth. No hospital bracelet, no birth certificate. Just a small pink knit cap in a dusty envelope labeled "Clara, coming home." Suddenly, Evelyn remembered the odd conversation she'd overheard years ago at a family party. Her husband Harold and his sister whispering in the kitchen. If she ever finds out, she won't, she can't, he took care of it. Still, that's not her blood. You know that, right? At the time, Evelyn thought it was about an insurance issue, or maybe something to do with Harold's mysterious inheritance. Now, it rang with new meaning. She called the DNA company. "There must be a mistake," she insisted. "These are my children. I was there for every scraped knee, every Christmas morning. I held them. I bled for them." The woman on the phone was sympathetic but firm. "The results are conclusive. Would you like us to send you a physical breakdown of shared genetic markers?" "No," Evelyn whispered. "I want to know who they do belong to." She paid extra to dig deeper. Public matches, relative trees, anything. Within days, she had names, and one of them, Julia Kerrigan, shared a suspiciously high match with both Clara and Dylan. Evelyn followed the digital breadcrumbs. Julia was from a small town, just 2 hours away. She had died 10 years ago, survived by twin children, and a brief obituary note that chilled Evelyn to the bone. She was preceded in death by a newborn girl given up for adoption in 1963. Evelyn was born in 1945. That child would have been born when Evelyn was 18, exactly when she supposedly had a nervous breakdown and was sent away for rest. She checked her birth certificate. It looked real. A hospital name, her parents' signatures. But then she remembered. The The fire that killed her parents also destroyed the original records. Her birth certificate had been reissued years later, on Harold's request. Her hands trembled as she typed in the DNA kit code for a reanalysis. This time she ordered it with historical family linkage tracing. And this time a new result surfaced. Possible parent-child match. Julia Kerrigan, deceased Julia? The woman who died 10 years ago? The woman she had never met? Another notification popped up on the dashboard. 2 individuals match your DNA within 1 generation, but do not match each other. This typically indicates adoption or child swapping events in early life. Evelyn's blood went cold. Could it be? Was she not Evelyn Hart? She ran to her closet, pulling out the shoebox Harold had always kept locked in his drawer. The key had vanished years ago, but she smashed it open with a hammer now, spilling yellow documents onto the floor. Among receipts and pay stubs was a thin, crumbling file marked St. Mary's Home for Displaced Girls, 1963. Inside, a faded intake photo of a teenage girl who looked exactly like Evelyn, but labeled with the name Margaret Julia Kerrigan. The room tilted. She was Julia Kerrigan's daughter. That made Clara and Dylan her siblings. But then, who would raise them? The final horror arrived in the form of a letter, folded inside a sealed envelope marked simply, "For Evelyn, if she ever asks." Harold's handwriting. "I did what I had to do. You were never supposed to remember. The doctor said it was better if you forgot everything after the fire. But they gave you a new life. I gave you a new name. The others, well, they weren't meant for you, but they needed someone. I thought you'd never know. I prayed you wouldn't." Evelyn fell to the floor, shaking. She wasn't Evelyn Hart by birth. Her children weren't hers by blood. And somehow, she had been given a family, while her own real life was stolen. She stared at the mirror on the wall, waiting to recognize the face that stared back. It didn't happen. Instead, she whispered aloud, "Who the hell am I?" And more urgently, "What else did they hide from me?" The name echoed in her head like a bell in a cavern. Margaret Julia Kerrigan. It sounded like someone else's story, someone else's tragedy. But the DNA test said otherwise. The sealed letter in Harold's handwriting confirmed it. She, Evelyn Hart, mother of 3, wife, invisible woman, had never really existed. She was someone else, taken, renamed, repurposed. And now, she had to find the girl she used to be. The path led her to a crumbling brick building on the outskirts of a rural town 2 states away, St. Mary's Home for Displaced Girls. It had been decommissioned decades ago, converted into a halfway house, and now stood half-condemned behind chain-link fences and overgrown hedges. She showed the faded intake record to a volunteer who guided her to the local archives where the home's paper trail had been stored. "I'm looking for records on a resident," Evelyn said, trying not to fidget. "Margaret Julia Kerrigan, taken in around 1963. The archivist, a kind woman in her 60s, looked up sharply. "That's not a name I've heard in a long time." She flipped through the dusty index. Most of the records from those years were sealed or disappeared. But she found something. A slim beige file, brittle at the corners, marked Kerrigan, MJ Confidential/Adoption Hold. Inside were fragments, medical intake notes, mention of post-traumatic amnesia following a house fire, signs of pregnancy. A line scribbled in pencil at the bottom chilled Evelyn to her core. No known family survivors. Memory altered post-treatment. Cleared for reassignment. Reassignment? Evelyn scanned the paper again. A final note said, "Matched with subject H. Hart. See case number 109A." She knew that case number. She'd seen it before, on one of Harold's old Army discharge files. She rifled through the box again that night and found it, 109A, Harold Hart, Private First Class, Psychological Operations Division. He hadn't been in accounting like he told her. He'd been in psychological operations, training in narrative construction, social influence, even experimental therapy. And he had met her while she was in the orphanage. The implication was monstrous. Harold had chosen her. not fallen in love, not rescued her, claimed her. Perhaps not as a husband, but as part of something colder, more methodical. He hadn't just loved her, he had written her into existence. Evelyn found herself spiraling. Her marriage was a script, her identity, a forgery, her family cobbled together from other people's traumas. Then came the final crack in the mirror. An old, folded photograph fell from between the pages of the orphanage file, a black and white image of a woman holding a baby, Evelyn as a baby, not Margaret, not Evelyn, just a baby in someone's arms. But the woman holding her was not the mother she remembered. She was younger, blonde, wearing a nurse's uniform. And on the back of the photo, in looping cursive, it read, "For Sister Agnes. Thank you for keeping her safe until transfer. M. Transfer." The word stuck like a needle under the skin. Evelyn's memories of her childhood had always felt foggy around the edges, but now she saw why. She hadn't grown up with parents. She had been moved. From hand to hand. Erased and rewritten. She returned to the archives and requested anything on Sister Agnes. The volunteer hesitated. "You sure you want to go down this road?" she asked softly. "Most of the girls who came through here, their files are heartbreaks in manila folders." Evelyn nodded. Sister Agnes's logs revealed something sickening. St. Mary's had been a hub for so-called war orphans in the 50s and 60s. But many of these girls weren't orphans. They were from unstable homes, or political families, or poor immigrants. They were renamed, repackaged, and placed into new households, many without proper adoption proceedings. Some were used in psychological experiments funded by shadowy programs. Others were given to influential couples unable to conceive. A disturbing note suggested at least 3 infants had, quote, vanished in transition. Evelyn's heart nearly stopped. She traced the name Agnes to a nursing home not far away. She made the trip. The woman who answered to the name Sister Agnes was ancient now, her mind slipping in and out of lucidity. But the moment Evelyn showed her the photo, the old nun gasped. "Margaret, you were the fire baby," she whispered. "Fire baby? You weren't supposed to remember. They said the trauma was too much. They said it was better this way." "Who are they?" Evelyn pleaded. Agnes closed her eyes. "Government men. They came with suits and folders. Your mother was unstable, they said. They took you. Said it was for your safety." Evelyn reeled. Her mother hadn't died in a fire. She'd been deemed unfit by someone, and Evelyn had been handed off like a classified file. On her way out of the facility, the nurse handed Evelyn a sealed envelope. "Sister Agnes gave this to me months ago, said someone would come asking." Evelyn opened it in the car. Inside was a second photo. 2 young girls standing side by side, mirror images of each other, twins. On the back, Julia and Margaret, 1948. The air drained from Evelyn's lungs. She wasn't Margaret Julia Kerrigan. She was Julia Margaret Kerrigan. And she had a sister. Somewhere out there, alive. The woman who might still hold the other half of Evelyn's stolen past. The day Evelyn Hart decided to face her children, the sky was the same muted gray as the day she buried her husband. Only this time, she wasn't burying anyone. She was digging everything up. She stood outside the house she had built with her own hands, back when love still felt like something warm and solid. She no longer expected reconciliation, only reckoning. And for the first time in decades, she carried with her not just pain, but power. Truth. Her granddaughter Ivy stood at her side, not as a guest, but as her undeniable legacy. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. "No," Evelyn said. "But I'm doing it anyway." The door swung open before they knocked. Clara stood in the threshold, arms crossed, guarded as always. "You brought her," Clara said coolly, eyes flicking to Ivy. "Invite us in," Evelyn said, "or let us speak on your front lawn. I don't care anymore." Inside, the house felt hollow. It wasn't the home Evelyn remembered. It was an echo of it. Too neat, too curated, like a museum of grief. Dylan was already seated, his face a stone mask. The oldest, Marcus, lingered in the back, clearly reluctant, his wife gripping his hand like he might bolt. "I'm not here for apologies," Evelyn began. "I'm here to tell you what you were never told, and what you chose not to see." She laid the photos on the table, the adoption records, the DNA test results, the photo of her twin sister, Julia. "None of you ever asked who I was before I became your mother. But now I know, my name isn't Evelyn Hart. It never was. I was taken, rewritten, married off to a man who wasn't what he seemed. You were raised in a house built on lies." The silence was deafening, until Clara laughed. "Is this the new narrative now?" "Convenient, since you hated how I told it." "You told a story," Evelyn snapped, "not the story. You erased me and wrote yourself a victim. But I was the one manipulated, abandoned, and left to clean up Harold's mess." Dylan finally spoke. "So this is about Dad again. That's rich, considering what you did after he died." Evelyn turned to him, calm but sharp. "You mean the will you forged? The accounts you drained?" "I have the forensic report, Dylan. I know what you did. I know why you turned everyone against me." His eyes narrowed. "He told me you were planning to cut me out. That you were going to rewrite the will and leave me nothing." "He lied," Evelyn said. "He lied to everyone, including me, the woman I thought I was never existed. Just like the man you all idolized didn't either." Marcus stepped forward at last, holding one of the documents. "You're saying Dad was part of some program? That he took you from an orphanage?" "Not just took me. They assigned me to him. I was part of a psychological operation, a wartime adoption masking a trafficking experiment. And when my birth sister and I were separated, we were told we were someone else." "That's insane," Clara whispered. "No. What's insane is that none of you ever asked why your mother faded into the wallpaper while you spun your own stories." Ivy stepped forward. "I'm not here to cause problems. But I am real. I'm Evelyn's granddaughter. And the baby who was given away, that was Clara." Clara blinked. "What?" "She was told the baby died," Ivy said. "I found the records, the name, your name. They told Evelyn you gave birth to a stillborn child so they could put me in the system and cut her out." Clara staggered back, like the words physically struck her. "No," she said. "No, I would have remembered." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "They made sure you wouldn't, just like they did to me. Just like they did when they changed who I was." The room cracked open with silence. A silence that wasn't empty, but full. Full of the weight of broken legacies, rewritten identities, and truths that had been whispered too long behind closed doors. Then came the knock. 3 soft raps. Evelyn turned, dread and curiosity coiling in her stomach. She opened the door and froze. Standing before her was a woman with the same eyes, the same bone structure. Her mirror, aged differently but unmistakable. "I think we're sisters," the woman said, her voice trembling. "My name's Julia." Behind her stood a man Evelyn recognized from the photo in Sister Agnes's file. Her real father. Alive. "You survived the fire," Evelyn whispered. "There was no fire," Julia said. "That's just what they told you. What they told me, too. But I never stopped looking for you." Ivy reached for Evelyn's hand, grounding her. Clara was crying now. Marcus looked lost. Dylan had left the room, and Evelyn stood on the threshold, between the life she had built and the truth she had found. "I don't know what happens next," she said, barely audible. Julia smiled. "Then we find out. Together." For the first time in decades, Evelyn didn't feel like a ghost in her own story. She felt found. But one question lingered, a whisper Evelyn would carry with her always. If the family she raised was built on lies, and the one she never knew was rooted in truth, Who had she really been all along? And was she too late to become her true self?